No, I'm not actually destroying my garden, but pruning back your perennials is one of the best things you can do in late winter. In this video, I'm going to show you how and why. In this video, I am going to make a distinction between herbaceous perennials and woody perennials. And the first plant I have here is called Zexmenia, and this is a type of herbaceous perennial. Herbaceous perennials typically have thinner stems, usually green, but sometimes can be brown, and those stems usually die all the way back to the soil line over winter. Now with this Zexmenia, I'm going to cut all the way to the soil line, and here in the next few weeks, we should start seeing that new growth come up. So this is a type of ornamental bunch grass known as pink Gulf muley. And this is a beautiful grass that has pink purple inflorescence in the fall. But you can see here it's pretty brown and it's gone dormant for the winter. This is considered an herbaceous perennial. So what I like to do in the late winter I like to come in and remove the bulk of these stems. So that way, as spring comes in and the new growth comes in, you can really see that vibrant green growth. How I do that is I gather all the stems at the base of the plant. You can see I've got a green tie here. Um, a, a bungee cord would work perfect for this. And I like to go ahead and shear that off about 6 inches above the soil line using my garden shears. So it's currently the 9th of March at the recording of this video, and you can do a lot of this work earlier in the winter, January, February. I tend to wait till about March because a lot of insects overwinter in these dead stems. And so I like to give them a little time to sort of clear out. But also, the dead stems can provide some degree of insulation and protection for the plant itself during freezes. This is Greg's Mistflower, and it is an herbaceous perennial. And so, like previously, I'm going to cut this all the way down to the soil line. Now, this particular plant has already got quite a bit of new growth at its base, so I'll just be careful not to damage that new growth when I'm pruning it. This is right skullcap, and it's also an herbaceous perennial, but it's an evergreen, meaning it's kept its leaves all through the winter. Now, it did suffer some degree of damage from some of those harder freezes that we had this winter, but for the most part, this has still got plenty of foliage on it. Now, this can still benefit from a nice pruning, and so I will cut this down not all the way to the soil line, but probably about 6 inches from the base. And that'll sort of reinvigorate the plant. It'll get rid of all of that freeze damage. And this will fill in nicely throughout the spring. So next here I have Mexican hat or prairie coneflower. I still don't know which one this plant is, but this is also an herbaceous perennial. And you could cut it all the way down to the base, to the soil line, but you can see this has got a lot of new growth. And so sometimes with these that have already gotten quite a bit of growth, I just sort of cut to where the majority of that growth line is and just remove the dead stems above that. So this is one of my top 3 plants for a Texas garden, and this is mealy blue sage. And these are herbaceous perennials. You can see these have got a lot of new growth at their base. And so I'm going to cut those dead stems all the way down to that new growth. And these are a plant that are pretty vigorous in growth, and they will actually benefit probably from another pruning end of spring and maybe even midsummer. So I do the majority of my pruning work with these 2 tools. This first one is the one I use most of the time. These are my hand pruners, and I can easily get through stems or small branches with these. Anything that makes me really strain using one hand to cut, if I'm having to do something like this, that's really a time that I should switch over to these. And these are a pair of loppers. And you can see that these loppers have these long handles, and that really allows you to kind of get some arm strength instead of just hand strength. And so I can cut about 2-inch branches with these loppers. Anything much larger than that, I'm going to have to probably use a handsaw. But one thing I do want to discuss is that with both of these tools, you want to make sure that you are disinfecting them with some sort of bleach solution or alcohol. I let them sort of sit in some warm water either before, but usually after I work. And that helps kind of clean off any resin or sap or anything that gets on those cutting surfaces and then dulls it, because then it's hard, they're not quite as effective the next time you use them. So next I want to talk about woody perennials. And woody perennials are different than herbaceous perennials in that their stems tend to be woody, sometimes covered in bark, but also their stems tend to be thicker, and they don't tend to die back all the way down to the ground over winter like herbaceous perennials. And for that reason, you will treat them a little differently when pruning. Now, just because the stems don't die back to the ground doesn't mean they don't benefit from pruning. When you prune your woody perennials, you're sending all that energy or that growth hormone down to the base of the plant, and it's going to tend to make a more denser, fuller plant for you if you do prune it. But I tend not to prune these down to the ground level. I prune them about 6 to 12 inches above the ground. This first woody perennial is Texas lantana, and this is a beautiful drought tolerant plant with lovely orange blooms. It'll bloom for you throughout the summer if it gets a little extra moisture. And I'm going to cut this about 6 inches above the ground. So if you see in the middle of these stems how green they are, that lets you know the stems are still alive. And so that's in contrast to our herbaceous perennials, where those stems, like I said, will die all the way down to that soil line. So behind me here, I have a nice run of autumn sage, and these are actually a woody perennial that is evergreen. And again, they can benefit from a nice heavy pruning so that you get a denser, fuller plant. And so I'll cut these pretty aggressively down to about 6 inches above the soil line. All right, so behind me here, I've got a couple of woody perennials. One is a flamacanthus, and the other is a Texas sage. And you don't have to prune your Texas sage, but if it looks a little scrappy and airy, it might benefit from a cut. So this particular one really took a little bit of damage from some of our freezes. I'm not really sure what's going on with it, but it looks a little leggy to me, and so I am going to cut it back. This flamacanthus, sometimes they will die all the way down to the ground, but I'm still going to cut it about 6 inches above the soil line. So this plant here is a rock rose, and this is also a woody perennial. And sometimes in milder winters, it can remain green for you, keeping its foliage. But after the couple of freezes that we had, this one is pretty much defoliated, but I am seeing a lot of new leaves emerge already on some of the very distal stems. That in mind, I'm still going to cut it down to probably, for this particular plant, about half the height of the plant, but I think you could even be more aggressive with this if you really wanted to. So here is my Texas redbud tree, and you can see, I don't know if you can tell, it's getting ready to flower. And really with some of these flowering trees, the ideal time to prune them back would be probably after they flower. But to be honest with you, I'm just going to go ahead and take care of it because I've got the time now. And so this tree canopy is pretty dense with lots of crossing branches, lots of branches going towards the midline. And so I'm going to kind of just get rid of some of that, more just to improve the structure of the tree. So this is after pruning the tree, and you can see how much clearing I did there in that central part of the tree. I just really wanted, I left things going sort of away from the midline was my goal, and I got a few crossing branches, and but it looks so much more open in the canopy there in the center part of the canopy, and that's what I was going for. I could have taken more, but you shouldn't take more than 25% of a tree. Here is everything I've pruned from that tree. Y'all, I still have so much pruning to do. I don't know if you can appreciate all of that. That's another Zexmenia. I've got scattered brush piles all throughout my landscape beds. And then as I curve around here, you can see that massive brush pile there. Now, granted, half of that sod that I removed, but still, it's pretty big. I did want to share just a couple of things going on. You can see those redbuds in bloom. They're looking so pretty. This one's a Texas redbud like we talked about in the video, but this one is a forest pansy. It's a different type of redbud. And then if you followed this, there's that pistache I finally chopped down but have not managed to dig out. Y'all see this? I don't know what I'm thinking. Maybe I can find something to like pull this out or something. I don't know, but I think I'm not gonna probably put a new tree here till the fall. But this bed, I recently extended. It was kind of, it ended sort of right here, but I pulled it forward all the way to this point, and I recently just put some plants in to include this Mexican buckeye. And so getting excited. I'll be sure to upload a tour of what's going on within the next week so you guys can see things a little clearer. But until the next one, y'all take care.